Okay. Uh, Everybody should be seeing the cover slide, demystifying the graduate admissions process. Again, I'm Jacob Barandes. In the Q&A, I'll have some time for asking questions, and you can just call me Jacob. I'm the co-director of graduate studies. That means I help run the PhD program in physics here at Harvard. And I also administer the admissions process. The admissions process is a complicated process every year. I've been doing this for about 10 years, and I'll have a lot to say about how the process works, who's involved, how admissions committees works, and more. Let me get started. So this is an outline of what I'll be talking about. I'll start with some general information. Then I'll talk a little bit about the timeline and schedule for admissions processes at science PhD programs. And then we'll go in depth into the ingredients of the application. Okay, so this is general information about the admissions process. The first and most important thing to know about graduate programs, about PhD programs, in particular in the sciences, is that PhD programs don't charge tuition. In fact, students get paid a salary. It's not a very large salary, but it's positive, not negative. Unfortunately, in most cases, that pay does not include relocation expenses. However, some institutions in the last couple of years have been working on this, and so this can vary from place to place. Some institutions have been working with admitted students in some cases to provide some support for the relocation. I highly recommend that students applying to PhD programs in the sciences look into applying for external fellowships if they're eligible. Some external fellowships require US citizenship, others don't. The fellowships that are most important to call out here are the National Science Foundation's Graduate Research Fellowship Program, that's the NSF-GRFP. That's the most numerous one in terms of the number of people who win them, and generally provides full support. There's also the National Defense Science and Engineering Graduate Fellowship. There's NASA fellowships, which are more targeted toward people who are working in astronomy and astrophysics related areas. The National Institutes of Health has fellowships that are more targeted toward people working in biology and medical programs. The American Association of University Women and Ford Fellowships provide fellowship support as well. I highly recommend that you do some Google searching and determine which fellowships, if any, you're eligible for. Now, I said that science PhD programs don't charge tuition and students get a salary. So what's the motivation for applying for an external fellowship? In some cases, external fellowships can provide more money on top of what a student's package would be. In other cases, it simply replaces what the university would already provide. In particular, when students start getting into research groups, if they have an external fellowship, it means that the fellowship is paying for the student rather than the research group. And that can make it slightly more likely that a research group will take a chance on taking a student into their group. Applying for external fellowships is also a really important experience in learning how to sell oneself in an academic context, learning how to write documents that ultimately one day students may write grant applications. So it's really important experience to develop. So I highly recommend people try it. And also winning one is prestigious. It's something that goes on your resume or your curriculum vitae, and down the line that can pay dividends as well. So the first thing to say about what makes up an admissions committee is that it's professors. It's professors in the general field you're applying for. If you're applying for a biology PhD program, the admissions committee is biology professors at the institution. If you're applying to a physics program or math program, well, then the committee consists of professors in that department. Generally, an admissions committee will draw from professors in various subfields within that department. So, for example, if you're applying to a physics program, it's not all going to be high energy theoretical physicists. It would be a mixture of physicists from different areas. The idea here is to ensure that there's at least one or ideally two people on the committee who have expertise in reading applications from students who are interested in working in a variety of different areas. It's important to note that these are professors. They're not professional admissions committee staff members. The people reading these applications are the people whom you would, in principle, be working with in grad school. And these are people who are experts in their field, and this may have implications for how you think about writing your application. What does a PhD program look like once you're in one? This can vary a lot from institution to institution, or even different science programs within a given institution. It can differ between chemistry at your institution or physics at your institution or biology. That said, there are some general features that PhD programs in the sciences tend to share. Generally, there's some kind of coursework in the first year of the PhD program, either optional coursework or required coursework. Some programs have strict course requirements, others are more flexible, but generally there's an understanding that during the first year, students will take more advanced versions of coursework that they may have seen before. Or if the student is in a science program that is a little bit different from what they studied in undergrad, which does happen sometimes, well, then the purpose of that first year coursework is to acquaint the student thoroughly in the subject field they'll be doing graduate work in. But after around the first year, the student switches from academic student mode to research mode. And research will occupy the large majority of what a student does in a PhD program. PhD programs are therefore qualitatively quite different from undergraduate programs or even many master's programs. They're not mostly courses, they're mostly research. And how a student does in grad school will rise or fall based on how research goes. There will also generally be some teaching that the student is involved in. And I'll maybe have a little more to say about that later. It's also important to note that in PhD programs, there is a qualifying process. That is, even after being admitted to a program, a PhD program, there are some things that students need to do to officially be qualified, to go through the qualifying process, to be considered what's called a candidate for the PhD. So again, this is after students already been admitted and already been there for maybe a year. There's this second additional set of steps. And these also differ quite a bit from school to school. In some schools, it's just course requirements. Once a student satisfies a number of course requirements, they are considered qualified and therefore PhD candidates. At other schools, there are comprehensive examinations. The only way to know the difference is, I guess, to do some Google searching of the different schools, look at their PhD program requirements in the area you're interested in studying. And, as you think about the schools you want to apply to, I would keep a list. I would keep a detailed document where you record the requirements that vary from school to school, and this may be part of how you determine which school you want to apply to. The typical duration of a PhD program in the sciences tends to be around 6 years, plus or minus 1. In some fields, it's a little bit shorter. In other fields, it's a little bit longer, but these are only averages. Unlike undergraduate programs, PhD programs don't have any definite length. They're done when you're finished, when you've completed enough research to put together what's called a thesis and give a presentation called the dissertation defense. So some students finish in less than 6 years and some can take substantially more. Let me talk a little bit now about the admissions timeline and schedule. This is a very broad brush look at the timeline. Individual students may have different timelines, and I want to make clear that if your timeline or your schedule doesn't line up exactly with all the things I've listed here, that's not necessarily a problem of any kind. I just want to give you the average overall picture of what it looks like for many students. So for many students, in the summer and into the fall semester leading into their senior undergraduate year, this is the time when students are completing maybe significant research projects, looking into taking the graduate record exam, the GRE. There is the general exam and also the subject-specific exams. This year, the GRE is in flux because test sites have been canceled because of the lockdown. And I should also just say that many PhD programs are reconsidering the role of the GRE. Some programs have canceled accepting the GRE at all. Some have simply made the general or the subject-specific GRE tests optional. It's very important that you check the graduate program page or the admissions page of different places you want to apply to see exactly what the status is on their GRE requirements. This is also the time to begin writing the statement of purpose. And I'll have a lot to say about what goes into writing a statement of purpose. This is also a good time to talk to potential letter writers, and I'll talk about recommendation letters and how they work as well. Many application deadlines for PhD programs in the sciences happen in December. However, some happen earlier and some happen later. And even those that happen in December can happen at various times in December. So I highly, highly recommend that you keep a detailed list, make a spreadsheet. Being organized about this process is extremely important. So make a list, double check it. You don't want to miss any application deadlines. A word about fee waivers. Many PhD program admissions processes have fees associated with them. However, in most or maybe all the cases, all cases of programs that you might apply to, you can get fees waived. The fee waiver process differs from program to program. In some programs, you have to email the admissions office. Other programs have like a checkbox right in the application that will let you request a fee waiver. Some programs will look at your application and how you describe your socioeconomic situation, and may actually give you a fee waiver or recommend a fee waiver automatically. So this differs quite a bit from program to program, but absolutely look into this. Cost should not be a determining factor whether you apply to programs. Generally, the process of reading applications then takes place over January through February. Some admissions committees have huge application loads, 800, 1,000 or more. And so depending on the size of the program, you may hear back middle or end of January for the smaller programs. For the larger programs, it may take until February to hear back. Once programs have begun to notify students about their admission status, they'll have, in many cases, open houses, meaning they'll, I guess in ordinary times, invite students to visit the school. Generally, they'll pay for travel costs and housing costs, and they'll feed students. And this is an opportunity for students to meet professors and meet fellow students who have been admitted, and also meet current students who are in the programs. Given the lockdowns in effect in many places, many open houses are likely this year, like last year, to be virtual, to be conducted by Zoom. The general agreement among PhD programs is that April 15th is the deadline for students to reply to offers. Some programs have wait lists for students who are not immediately admitted, but are put on a wait list in case they end up having slots. So if you are on a wait list, you should be very mindful of this April 15th deadline. Many students reply to their admissions offers close to this deadline, and so many schools won't know if they can take students from their wait list until around then. If you are on a wait list, I highly recommend that you are in close contact with those programs about whether there are spots that will open up. Let me talk now about the ingredients of an admissions application. So what are admissions committees looking for? Well, like I said, the first year may involve some coursework, but ultimately how students do in a PhD program is really based on research. And the large majority of time and effort a student will spend in the 6 or so years of a PhD program in sciences will be on research. So admissions committees want to know that students are going to do okay with research, that students are going to thrive at it, that they enjoy research, and that they have evidence, experience from before they've applied in research to demonstrate that they can succeed at it and they enjoy it and they're good at it. because PhD programs want to be very careful about admitting students who are going to really struggle with research. Hey, I'm sorry, love. I'm in a meeting.
After you're finished with the meeting, do you want to come upstairs and build this out with me?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Can you close the door? Thank you, love. Okay. Right, yes. Presenting during the COVID era. Okay, so right, so research success is what admissions committees are looking for. And again, admissions committees are made up of professors, who do research for a living, and whom you would be working for. So you really want to persuade them that you're gonna succeed and that you enjoy doing research. Again, you may have classes or qualifying exams before research gets into full swing. So one thing you'll also need to do on your admissions application is persuade the committee that you will be able to get through those classes and tests without too much difficulty. That said, simply having super high grades in undergrad is not enough. That may persuade them that you'll be able to handle those classes and tests, but really, once you've persuaded them you can do that, the key thing is to show that you enjoy and can succeed at doing research. So the first ingredient of the application, apart from the application form itself, is the transcript. What are admissions committees looking for on transcripts? Well, it depends on the program, but different fields tend to have different core curriculums, broadly speaking. The general things that professors in that field will expect incoming PhD students to know and understand. I come from physics. For physics, I can say that what admissions committees would be looking for is the student is familiar with classical mechanics, electromagnetism, quantum mechanics, thermodynamics. It's the basic core curriculum. But again, this can vary depending on field. In biological fields and in chemistry, there may be different expectations. I highly recommend that you speak to professors at your current institution, if you have a mentor or advisor, to get their read on the kinds of things that committees in your field will be expecting to see at a minimum. It's generally also good to have some upper level electives in advanced topics beyond the core curriculum to show committees that you've gone beyond the minimum, that you have interests that are maybe a little more specialized or a little more advanced. And this, of course, will differ from student to student. Different students have different interests. Some students have asked me in the past, does it matter if you've taken graduate level courses? Well, generally taking advanced courses looks better on your transcript. If you've taken and done well on graduate level courses, that will help, but it's absolutely not necessary. I should also just note that committees are not terribly interested in how you did in courses that are unrelated to your field of study, the field in which you're applying to grad school. So if you didn't do really well in that literature class or that history class, but you're applying to a PhD program in microbiology, it won't matter. The admissions committee generally will not care. I get a lot of questions about the statement of purpose, and for good reason. The statement of purpose is a very important part of the application. It's the part of the application where you get to express yourself, where the committee gets to hear from you as authentically as basically they can, apart from an interview. Some admissions committees are doing interviews nowadays, but apart from that, the statement of purpose is really your opportunity to express yourself and an opportunity to do it in a prepared, careful, organized way. I'm going to go into a lot of detail about the statement of purpose because, again, it is really important. And I've seen in my time committee members make decisions about whether to admit a candidate based on the quality of the statement of purpose, whether it looked like a mature statement of purpose, one that really indicated that a student had a good grip on what they wanted to do. The first thing to say is that a statement of purpose is about a page and a half. Length here is something to be mindful about. Longer is not better. If you can make it shorter than a page and a half, that's actually even better. They're not grading you or giving you good marks on like it being as long as possible. Your application is likely to be read by busy, tired professors who've been reading many, many other applications. They may have 100 in their pile or more that they have to read. This may be the 24th application essay they've read just in that day. So you want to make it absolutely as easy and painless as possible. This is not a poetic essay. This is not an essay where you should explore, creative organization. You want to keep this essay to a predictable format so that committee members can quickly scan and look for the key information and not get lost. You want them to be able to find all the important information about you in as simple and quick a way. They will appreciate that. That means you want to be organized. You don't want to waste any space. You want to double, in fact, triple, quadruple check your grammar to make sure your grammar is clear. Use the shortest possible sentences you can use. Cut down on adjectives. Go over it, and every word you see, if it does not absolutely have to be there, remove it. Some students ask me, should they have like headers? Should they use like bold headers to divide up their statement of purpose? Not all students do that. I don't think it's incredibly important to do that. But if you find that it helps organize your essay, that's totally fine. You want to be clear. You want to use the right level of terminology. By right level of terminology, I mean the level of terminology, the use of jargon that is characteristic of writing, of technical scientific writing in your field. You don't want to go overboard and use way more terminology than is typical for people writing papers or grant applications in your field. But you should use an appropriate amount because it's likely your application will be read by at least one person who's familiar with your particular subfield of study. That said, your application will also be read by maybe professors who are not specialists in your field. So you want to make sure that you're not writing just to that one committee member, that your essay is at least accessible to others who are experts in the general field you want to study, but maybe not in your particular subfield. Don't pull out your thesaurus and use big words otherwise. There are no bonus points for using big words. In fact, the simplest words you can use, the better. Again, you want to make reading this essay as simple as possible. In terms of tone, you want the tone to come across as professional. You want to present yourself like a professional, like someone who could be a future colleague of the people here. So that means, enthusiasm is okay. After all, you're excited about going to grad school, but not too much. You want to sound like an enthusiastic grown-up, which you all are. You want to try to avoid cliches, poetic metaphors. I know it's a little bit amorphous to say this, but you want to avoid sounding naive. And again, getting a good check from if you have professors you're already working with at your institution, mentors, advisors, on how things sound in your essay, that would be a good idea. Don't start your essay talking about how you looked at the stars as a child, or you read books by popular science writers or whatever. They're not interested. Like a third of the essays I see start that way, and committee members just skim right past it. Frankly, a lot of them find it kind of annoying. You should start your research journey from when you were doing real scientific work. In most cases, that means undergrad, unless you did something really substantial in high school. Again, you can't afford to waste any real estate in this essay. It has to be as short as possible, but still get all the important points across. I recommend starting writing early, months before the deadline. Absolutely do not start the week before the deadline. That will not work. You have to start months before the deadline. And you have to take breaks from it, a week or two, and then come back and look at it again with fresh eyes. It can be very hard to see things when you're looking at it over and over again if you don't take a break and look at it again fresh. Show drafts to professors, especially people who you'll be asking or whom you've asked to write your letters, to get candid feedback. If you know professors at your institution, they've been probably engaged in admissions processes themselves. They've read many of these essays themselves, so they'll have really, really helpful feedback for you. Okay, let me break down the statement of purpose in even more detail. The first paragraph is the most important. The first paragraph is like the snapshot or fingerprint of who you are. You want to get this across in a memorable way, but in a compact way. You want to summarize your background and your interests, ideally in a memorable way, in roughly 5 sentences. This may be the only thing committee members see on a first pass. They may be very busy. They may just skim these first paragraphs and a lot of applications. So you want to make this one count. That said, If you go on further into the admissions process, if they like your application and give it further review, your whole essay will be read in detail. So everything here is important, but the first paragraph is especially important because it may be the thing that they see just on their first pass. Generally, I recommend that there be one sentence on each of your formative academic or research experiences, summarizing what you'll then describe in more detail later in the essay, and then one or two sentences on the kind of work you want to do going forward. If you have any exceptional notes about your application, if you've won any special awards, if there's anything particularly interesting that you want to stand out, you might put a sentence or two about that in your opening paragraph as well. After that first paragraph, you'll have roughly 3 body paragraphs. This can vary. You may have 4, you may have 2, but generally 3 is typical. The paragraphs should be chronological, like the first paragraph being the earliest, and then the second paragraph being chronologically later, and then your third paragraph being the latest experience. Generally, these should describe research experiences you've had. Again, admissions committees want to know you're going to succeed at research at the institution. It doesn't benefit anybody for you to join a PhD program and then not succeed at research. You won't be happy, and the program won't be happy. So you want to persuade them that you have experience doing research, that you've enjoyed it, that you've succeeded at it, as evidence that you will do well at research at their institution. In each of these body paragraphs, and the outline is structured, and it is to your advantage to keep to the structure so that committee members will be able to find the information they need when they read your essay. You want to start with whatever the problem is that you were addressing, like what was the subject, whom you worked with, your advisor, what techniques you had to learn and that you had to use in the process of carrying out your research, what difficulties or challenges you ran into, and research is all about overcoming challenges, any progress that you made, an explanation of how you dealt with these challenges and any steps that you took toward getting around them. If you have any results to share, data, results, analyses, maybe papers, although a lot of students who apply to programs don't have any papers, that's okay. And what you learned, how this shaped your experience. And you basically want to replicate this 3 times, like chronologically for each of the formative research experiences that you've had. Now, some students may not have 3 major research experiences. That's actually totally fine. If you don't have enough research experiences to fill 3 paragraphs, you might use one of these paragraphs to talk about an important academic experience or course that shape your development as a scientist. You would talk about the title or subject of the course, who the instructor was, what was your favorite part, what was the most valuable that you took from this course, what did you learn, how did it shape your trajectory. I know a lot of students who actually make that their first paragraph before they lead into their research paragraphs, because sometimes it was an important academic experience or course that led them into the particular research direction, or brought them into communication with advisors who played a big role in their development. The final paragraph of the application should be tailored to the individual school. I'm going to say this, it's extremely important to make sure that you send the correct essay to the correct school. So double, triple, quadruple check that if you're writing the essay for school X, that's the essay that goes to school X. This final paragraph, and again, the structure here, there's a clear structure. You describe what research you want to do, and it should make sense that you want to do this research given your trajectory. It's okay if your trajectory has changed direction a bunch of times in the past. That's true for a lot of people. But at this point, at the beginning of your final paragraph, there should be a narrative. It should make sense why you now want to do the thing you want to do, even if you've changed direction. And if you need to explain a little bit why you've moved in that direction, that's fine. Then you want to talk about the reasons why the particular school this essay is for would be a good fit. This school has a newly built research center that specializes in your area, or the school recently got a very large new endowment for the research you want to do, or the school's recently expanded one of its programs that we want to do. And then you want to talk about individual faculty members who are doing research in your area whom you would want to work with. And you want to list some of their research that you'd be interested in doing to demonstrate that you have an understanding of what's going on at that institution. This will involve doing some web research. I highly recommend talking with your current advisors or mentors beforehand to find out what's interesting in that field, who's working on what they're excited about, and therefore like what you should include in this final paragraph. This will signal to the admissions committee that you are in the know, which is really sort of a larger, the larger theme that you want to get across, that you're someone in the know, you have a sense of what's going on in the field. So that's the statement of purpose. Let me talk a little bit about letters of recommendation. For science PhD programs, generally the expectation is 3 letters. Quantity is not the key thing here. If you have 4 letters that are not very strong, that's not great. Having 3 very strong letters is really the ideal. And also, ideally, these letters are from research supervisors, because again, the admissions committees, they want to know, are you going to succeed at research? I know I've driven that point home a lot, but it's really important. And so getting candid information from people you've done research with, who've overseen your research, ideally professors, or if you've worked in an industrial capacity, someone who's like a project leader, or if you've worked at a lab, like a national lab or something like that, someone who's overseen research and who's familiar with managing research and managing people who do research for them. Getting candid information from someone like that in your letter is very important for admissions committees to determine whether you'll succeed at research. When you ask for letters, ask early, ask months before the deadline, give people lots of time. Like I said, sharing your draft statement of purpose with them is a really good idea, because they'll have good feedback for you, and it will also help them make their recommendation letters more personalized. Generally, if you're going to ask someone for a letter, it's also helpful to list for them a couple of things that you're most proud of, and hopefully they'll be able to work that into their letter. They may also want to meet with you and talk about your plans and talk about your background a little bit. Don't be afraid to ask if it will be a strong letter. When you ask someone for a letter, you should add, I'd like to, if it's okay, ask you for a letter. And also, I'm hoping this will be a strong letter. If they tell you they can't write you a strong letter, that's really important to know. Even if it means they decline writing you a letter, if they're not going to write you a good letter, it's not going to be helpful for your application. So it's really good to know that. And if you ask for a strong letter, you're giving them an opportunity to decline. And that's also important, because again, it's better not to have a bad letter than not to get a letter from that person. What makes for a strong letter? Well, the letter is going to be written by the person you're asking the letter from, but if you have a sense now about what goes into a good letter, that may shape, how you plan your work going forward. What do admissions committees want to see? Well, they want to see you're going to succeed at research. So they want to see that the letter says that you're creative, that you learn quickly, that you're a good communicator, that you're good working with your hands, depending on what kind of research you're doing, if you're doing hands-on work, that you're a welcome team member, that you're already operating like a grad student. These are the kinds of things that committees are going to want to see. Now, I've emphasized the importance of getting letters that are related to your research. But, like I was saying about the statement of purpose, not all students have 3 major research experiences with 3 different people. That's okay. It's quite frequent that students will get, a letter from a class that they did really well in. You should have gotten a good grade in the class. If you had a very low grade, it's going to be very awkward for the person to write you a letter. And ideally, you've also stood out in some way in this class. You've asked questions, you've been to office hours. This professor knows you beyond just a letter grade. And so the reason I'm laying all these out is, some of you may not be applying right now. There may be some time before you apply. So you should keep these things in mind as you think about the classes that you're taking. If you're taking a stretch class, a class that will be really challenging, but you're going to put a lot of effort into it, and you plan to try to do really well in it, make sure that you get to know the professor. Like, ask questions, go to office hours, because if the class goes really well, they may be someone who will write you a letter, and it will be very helpful if they know who you are. Let me say something very briefly about the GRE. There's the general GRE exam, which has quantitative, verbal, and writing sections. There's the subject GRE, which, depending on your field, may be required, may not be required, may not even be accepted anymore. It's graded out of 990. If you'll need to be taking the GRE, study, look into study books, test prep courses, ask around. There are many different subject tests. I can't give a complete list of all the different books to look into. But like I said, a lot of schools are reconsidering the role of the GRE. And the GRE exams, and I apologize, I don't off the top of my head know exactly which ones have been canceled, but some of them have been canceled this year. And so this may be less of an issue. The application also includes a curriculum vitae, which is your comprehensive resume. It's not a one page where you just fit everything into one page. It can be as long as you need it to be. There's no real page limit on this. You want to include a brief bio on you and what you're interested in, school or schools that you've attended, your degree or intended degrees, a chronological list of your research experiences, which kind of summarize in bullet point form what would be in your statement of purpose, who you worked with, what the project was, maybe one paragraph on what was involved, a list of maybe your teaching experiences, and then toward the end, volunteer work and any special skills. I want to end the presentation with the most important slide, apply. A lot of students come and talk to me, and we talk about applying, and then they decide, well, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe it's not going to work out, maybe I shouldn't bother. Don't count yourself out. None of you have been on admissions committees before. You would be very surprised at how carefully committees look at applications, at the kinds of things they weigh. They're looking for more than just grades or abundant research experience. They're looking for grit. They're looking for creativity. They're looking for things that are sometimes difficult to define. They're looking for potential at being a successful scientist, and they know how to do that better than almost anybody. I mean, many of them have been doing admissions for many years. So you should really leave it to them to decide whether you're going to make it in grad school. And you can't get in if you don't apply. So absolutely apply. Most schools don't have cutoffs on test scores or grades. They will look at the whole application for any areas of strength. That said, the admissions process can be unpredictable. Even if you have a very strong application, sometimes you just don't get into schools. Sometimes the areas of research you want to work on are just not something the school really has right now, or maybe they're full in that area and they can't take any more students who want to work on that particular subject and you don't get in. Not getting into a school doesn't mean anything about the quality of your application. But it does mean you should apply to enough schools where if you don't get into a few, you'll at least get into some good places. You'll want to include in this list, ideally 8 to 12 programs. You'll want to include some safety schools as well as some reach schools. That said, if you wouldn't want to go to the school, you shouldn't apply. So make sure every school on this list is a place you'd like to go. There are amazing professors and amazing students at lots and lots of places. Our undergraduate institutions are graduating really amazing people, and our doctoral programs are producing really great scientists. So there are amazing people everywhere. So you'll need to do a little bit of web research and talking to people at your current institution to get a sense about which schools would be really great to be at. And so make sure you have enough there so that if you don't get into a few, it'll still go okay. Again, if cost is a consideration, remember that most schools, maybe all at this point, offer fee waivers. You may need to email the school's admissions office to ask, but it's just an email, and it's worth it. I mean, if you can get fee waivers in all of your schools, then this process, will be very financially affordable. The fee waiver process is completely independent of the admissions review process. The people who handle fees and grant admissions waivers have nothing to do with the people who make decisions. The people who make the application decisions will not know that you got a fee waiver. So it really does not hurt you at all to get one, not even in the slightest. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. I think I'm going to stop there. And I think we have time for questions. Linnell, Rodrigo.
Hi, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Give me just 1 second here. Okay, thank you so much, Jacob. I think that as you were speaking, we were saying with our team, we were saying how you are kind of the right person for this because you're so detail oriented. And I remember going to talks like this 2 years ago, and a lot of the things that you talked about today really are things that I wish I had known at the time. So thank you very much for bringing that information to all of us and to all of our participants. I think this is incredibly valuable. With that being said, I want to open the floor for questions for the remaining. We have a few minutes here. We have about 10 minutes. So anybody, any questions are welcomed. Just feel free to either put them in the chat, or you can also unmute yourself, unmute your camera, and ask the question directly, whatever you think is best.
All questions welcome, no questions too small or too big.
Jacob, if I may make a request, could you go back into presenter mode and then turn on closed captioning just so that your answers are also captioned?
Sure, let me do that. Hold on.
Great, thank you so much. And then if somebody asks a question over voice, perhaps to repeat it briefly. So we already had 2 questions that were written. The first one was, can you use the same recommendations for fellowships and school applications, or are they different?
Recommendation letters may actually vary from school to school, but generally you can ask the same people, and if they have to make slight modifications to the letters, it's fine. I mean, if they're writing you a letter for a grad program, they'll say, I highly recommend student so-and-so for your graduate program. If the letter is for a fellowship application, they'd want to change that to say, I highly recommend this student for your fellowship. But the content of the letters for grad schools and for fellowships are going to be basically the same. So it should be very superficial modifications that need to be made. That said, you want to give any recommendation letter writers plenty of time to adapt their letters for the different purposes you'll have. But generally, it'll be the same people, and the letters will look basically the same.
So I think there are a few more questions in the chat as well. It would be great if you have a question to, so in Zoom, there's a feature called raise your hand if you click see the panelist. So if you go to raise your hand, you can like basically raise your hand in Zoom and we'll call on you in order of the people who raise their hands, and then you guys can unmute yourself. You can choose to take off your video and or your in as well in addition. So we'll just go in the order. So it looks like the next person is Karina Barboza. You can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Hi, Karina. Nice to meet you.
Hello, nice to meet you guys. I just had a quick question. Like, is there more of an emphasis on graduate courses? Like, are grades there than on the lower division courses?
Oh, you mean, is it more important to get, so do committees look more carefully at your grades in upper level and grad classes than they do at intro classes?
Yes.
Yes. Committees absolutely consider the trend in a student's academic performance over time. I've known a number of students who did not do well in their intro coursework. Maybe there was a lot going on when they started college. Maybe they didn't know what they wanted to do. Maybe they hadn't figured out how college works. And then they figure things out. They take upper level courses and do really well on them. And committees absolutely will, in that case, strongly downweight the intro courses. They care much more about how students do in their upper level and more advanced courses.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Great, thank you. The next person is Jennifer Rodriguez.
Hi, Jennifer. It's nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you too. I had a question about when you said tailoring the application to different grad schools. Do you have any suggestions as to how to highlight like your interest in that school? Or is it more of like, oh, like a general like assumption and just like switch the grad school name?
That's a good question. So you should switch the grad school name. That's important. But yeah, there's more that you can do. You should do, I would say, about 30 minutes of web research. Go to the school's homepage, go to the program's homepage. If you're applying for chemistry PhD program at University X, go to like University X's Google University X's chemistry page, and look around, look at what they have. Maybe, like I said, they've opened up a new institute doing, atomic force microscopy, and that's exactly what you're doing. So you could say that in your essay. I work in this particular area, and I feel like this would be a great fit given the school's recent investment in this. You'll find little things like that at various places. But you may not. You may go to places and there's not anything specific that calls to you. In that case, tailoring means listing professors. You should do that in any case, even if they do have something more specific. But either way, you should include a list of professors at that institution you'd want to work with, and what research they're doing that would be a good fit for you. I have this listed here in this final paragraph page. Which faculty members you might want to work with, and a list of their research topics. And again, you'll want to talk ideally with someone at your current institution to get a feel for who's working on what at that school, what they're excited about, so that you can list it. And so maybe if they're on the committee, or if one of their colleagues is on the committee, they'll see this and go, oh yeah, this student's interested in this thing that my colleague really is very excited about. This would be a really good fit. So yeah, and what I'll just say also is, if there's no one at the school who's doing research in anything you want to do, like if you can't, I've occasionally had students come to me and say, I really want to go to school X, but there's no one there working at what I want to work on. And don't apply. If you go there and there's no one to work with, you're not going to be happy. They won't be happy. They probably won't admit you. Schools are just as interested as you are in finding a good match between what you want to do and who they have there. So these are all ways you can tailor that, your statement of purpose to the school.
Okay, thank you.
And please remember also, we do have another workshop right after this that's about the application process specifically. So if you have, not application process, the statement of purpose specifically. So if you have questions about the statement of purpose, I would also save those for that part, for that workshop specifically. So yes, Samara, you're the next person I see on the list.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I actually have two questions, so hopefully they'll be quick. So the first one I have is that if you're planning to take say a year or a few months off after graduation, and you're planning on applying to graduate school or a PhD program, then what should we do now to, I guess, prepare ourselves?
That's a great question. I didn't talk about gap years or gap time in this presentation. Maybe in the future I might add a slide about it, because I do often get a lot of questions. You have a couple of options here. Students who are considering taking a gap year can either apply to grad school in their final undergraduate year, with an understanding that if they get into programs, they'll request a deferral. Deferrals are fairly standard, especially if during the gap time you want to do something that is connected with science in some way, whether it's teaching science or continuing on some research project, or doing some new kind of research project or something scientific related. And most schools grant deferrals routinely, so there's kind of no problem with this. And in this way, you're locked into a school. After this deferral period, you'll eventually be able to go to that school. In other cases, students don't apply in their final year. They take some time off, and then they apply in the next cycle. In my experience, taking some time off between undergrad and grad school is usually helpful. It usually means that students start grad school a little fresher, a little bit farther away from undergrad mode, the undergrad mentality of just classes, classes, classes. Grad school is really qualitatively a different experience. PhD programs are a different experience. And students also sometimes have a little more perspective if they've been out and got a chance to see the world a little bit. So it's generally actually kind of helpful. That said, if you're going to spend gap time doing something unrelated to science altogether, and if you're going to take more time than a few months or a year, that can start to have a negative impact on grad school. Admissions committees might not understand what you were doing with that time, whether you're really committed to doing scientific research. So I would say that there are contexts in which there are constraints under which taking some gap time can be okay. But again, the things to consider are, do you apply first, or do you do you apply while you're in the gap period? But I can tell you right now, I've known several students who did undergraduate, who majored in subject X, but were kind of interested in subject Y, but didn't have a lot of time to work on it while they're undergrads. And so they deliberately take a gap year. They don't apply right away. They take a gap year, maybe to work with a professor at their institution for some months or a year on subject Y, get some experience, and then apply to programs in that subject. I've seen that happen, and I've seen it work. So there are a lot of reasons to do it. I would have a detailed conversation with people at your institution who know you and know your trajectory to get a sense about whether it makes sense for you to take a gap period, whether it will help your application, whether you should apply first or and then ask for a deferral or apply later. These are all things to think about. I hope that answers your question. I'm sorry, did it answer your question?
Yes, it did. Actually, also answered my second question as well.
Oh, great. Predicting the future is something I like. Okay, good.
Great. We have time for maybe one or two more really quick questions. Akosha?
It's nice to meet you.
Hello. Yes, please. I just wanted to ask if you could talk a little bit about the structure of the curriculum vitae in terms of how we should organize it whilst we're expanding on our research experience.
The best advice I can give about this is to do some web searching. Find a good template. Do some web searching. These days you'll find a lot. I mean, unfortunately, given our time, it would be difficult for me to lay out the whole structure. But the truth is, I don't need to. Find a good template. Many undergraduate institutions have an office, like a career office or something like that, and if you just email or contact them, they'll send you a template to use. Another really great thing to do is, well, I was going to say, I think web searching is really the best approach here. But I had a list of things that you want to include over here on this slide. Brief description of what you want to do, what you're interested in, school, intended degree or degrees you already have, research experiences. But again, for more detail, I would say just look at a template that's available online. I'm sorry I couldn't provide a more detailed answer.
Thank you so much, Jacob. So we have about 1 minute left. I first want to thank Jacob so much for coming and presenting this information to you guys. Please remember we have a lot of other events as well. So today you guys will be meeting with folks to just talk about or ask more of these kinds of questions to people who have already gone through this process in particular. So if you didn't get your questions answered in this session, they might get answered in all of the other sessions over the weekend. So please keep that in mind. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to
Can I just say thank you quickly? Thank you to Linnell, Rodrigo, Stephen, and Lauren for all your amazing work. And thank you to everybody who's here participating. I wish you all the best of luck. Please, 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 please apply. Please apply. Please.
All right. Thank you, guys. You can start leaving and heading over to the next session. I'm going to also end this webinar so that we can start the next session. Thank you. Yeah.
Is it not the same?
It is. You're right. I was good. Yep. You guys stay here.
Everyone stay here.
We just need to change. You're right.
Right. Please remain seated for the next presentation.
All right.
Okay, I'm going to sign off, everybody, but thanks again.
Thanks, Jacob. Completely forgot. So I stopped the recording. I need to remember to
Thank you, Jacob.
to keep the same settings. Yes, they are. Yeah, so that we don't have to break. Yep, I remember now.
Okay, give me just a second to complete my setup.
No, you're fine. You have, a minute or so. And I think also some people left because I said leave and then because I forgot completely. Yeah, a nice save. We were like troubleshooting stuff or like talking about something else. And then Rodrigo was like, Jacob, we're here.
There were